welcome to this week's episode of The Bark for Butler 360 Sports. I'm Kelsey Casper.
And I'm Cisco Scaramuza. We have a great show lined up for you this week, including interviews with men's tennis player Mason Dragos and women's track sprinter Carson Field. As well, we're going to take an in-depth look into the women's lacrosse team.
But first, the Butler men's basketball team is looking ahead to the Big East tournament this week. Cisco and I sat down to highlight the final games of the season against St. John and Seton Hall, along with what the Bulldogs need to do before heading to New York. The Butler men's basketball team wrapped up their regular season with 2 away games against St. John and Seton Hall. The Dogs were unable to take a win from either of those 2 Big East teams. Cisco, give us a look at the St. John game from last week.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Butler men's basketball fell to St. John's in double overtime last Wednesday in Queens, New York. The Red Storm were able to lead by 3 at the half, despite not having star player Shamori Pons due to an injury. However, the Bulldogs were up 58-53 with 17 seconds left in regulation when Marvin Clark knocked down a 3. A Butler turnover would force the game into overtime, though. In the second overtime, St. John's scored 9 straight points to win the game. For the Bulldogs, Keelan Martin and Paul Jorgensen led the team with 17 points apiece, but it wasn't enough to overcome St. John's 47% shooting. The Bulldogs lost this one 75-68.
Well, Cisco, the Dogs are now heading into the Big East tournament with little momentum, and now the brackets came out on Sunday. They have the Dogs as number 6, escaping that first round, but will have to meet up with number 3, Seton Hall, again tomorrow. Cisco, what do you think the Dogs need to work on in order to beat the Pirates this time?
They just need to work on their fundamentals. This is a team with a lot of talent between Martin, Weidman, Jorgensen, all these guys. We know they can go up and score big points, but when you look at the Seton Hall game we had on Saturday, Keelan Martin scored 35 points. He scored half the points of the entire team. So, I mean, this is a team that just needs to share the ball a little bit more. They just need to just spread out the scoring because, you know, you can't win a game when the rest of the team is scoring 10 or less points.
You're right, and I think that's something that makes Butler's team unique is their ability to score off the bench. I mean, now that Sean McDermott is in the starting lineup and Paul Jorgensen can come off the bench and score a lot of points. Also, Nate Fowler, he can come in for Weidman. And even freshman Christian Davis has seen those minutes. So I think if a combination of the starters and the bench, they come together, score some points, I think we'll have no problem winning this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And also shot selection is a very big part for this Butler team. We saw Tyler Weidman go 3 of 14 in the game against St. John's, and just a lot of shots that just don't need to be taken. So I think they need to slow the pace down a little bit, pass the ball around, and make sure they're taking good, smart shots, not just taking shots.
Definitely. Well, if they beat Seton Hall, they'll move on to the semifinals, and most likely we'll see number 2 Villanova, a team that the Dogs have done fairly well against in the past, as we have seen. So, Cisco, how do you think that matchup will end up?
If they can get through Seton Hall, then we're probably dealing with the Butler team that we saw earlier in the season. So if they can do that and they can be able to get everybody together and start scoring, then yeah, I think we absolutely have a shot against Villanova. But we need to get through Seton Hall first, and if we do that, it'll be the Bulldogs' first win in the Big East Conference.
Definitely. Well, we just have to take it one game at a time.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to see how the Bulldogs favor in the Big East tournament as they take on Seton Hall tomorrow at Madison Square Garden.
I'm Bark reporter Chris Brown with updates on a few Butler teams from the weekend. The baseball team continued its great start, winning 2 of its 3 games over the weekend to improve to 10-1 on the season. Junior catcher Zach Parker went 4 for 4 on the weekend, knocking in 5 runs and scoring a run. On the pitching side, senior Josh Walker came in relief in Game 1 against St. Peter's and struck out 7 batters in 3 2/3 innings. The baseball team returns to action in their home opener on Friday, March 9th against Fort Wayne. Switching gears to softball, the Bulldogs lost 3 of their 5 games over the weekend in Nashville, falling to 4-10 on the season. Junior infielder and pitcher Caitlin Dowd had 4 RBI and a run scored on the weekend, while freshman pitcher Alyssa Graves tossed 16 1/3 innings, allowing just 1 earned run while striking out 19. The softball team travels to Memphis for 4 games, March 9th through 11th. Now, here's Bark reporter Keelan Martin with an update on the women's basketball team.
The Butler women's basketball team lost its last regular season game on Sunday to the Xavier Musketeers, 57-54. Leading the way for the Bulldogs was redshirt junior guard Whitney Jennings with 15 points and sophomore guard Christian Spoyer with 12 points. The Bulldogs were down by 1 point at halftime. Here's what Coach Gillespie had to say at the break.
How'd you feel your team ended that half?
I thought we got the looks that we wanted to. Ran some nice stuff for Torrey. We just got to do a better job of defensive rebounding and seeing if we can't transition and get those easy baskets that we struggled in the midway through the second quarter to get.
Spoyer hits a three-pointer in the corner to go up 2 points in the third quarter, but Xavier guard Natisha Owens banks in a 30-footer to beat the buzzer at the end of the quarter. Xavier guard Kendall Fincher hit a three-pointer to go up 5 points in the fourth quarter. The Musketeers never looked back and won the game by 3.
The Butler men's tennis team is coming off a tough loss to Purdue last week after a 7-game winning streak. Bark reporter Ryan Roach sat down with junior men's tennis player Mason Dragos to talk about team improvements and what's ahead on the schedule.
So I'm here today with Butler tennis player Mason Dragos. Mason, thanks for joining us today.
No problem.
I realize how busy you guys are with this new season underway. You guys have faced some tough opponents, including Purdue last week, in which you guys lost 4-2. So what are some of the things you guys can improve on by winning the next match?
I think, just holding ourselves like more accountable for like stupid shots in practice, and just making a more consistent effort of bettering our abilities by making sure every ball counts, even if it's just a practice shot. And I think that would really have a big impact on our match play in the future.
Awesome. So overall, how do you feel the season has gone so far with your 8-2 record?
The season's going really well. We've been doing very well, like deep in the lineup. We went to 3, 4, 5, 6. Quite a bit. I think Aviv and I at 1 and 2 could do a little bit better job of bringing some wins to our team, but I think that is to come, hopefully. I think our doubles has been way better. The last couple previous years, we would go every match without winning a doubles point, which is huge this year. I think we've won 5 or 6 in a row now this season, so that's a huge change that we're all not used to.
Gotcha. So what do you eat usually the night before a big match?
The night before a big match, I say especially if we're traveling and we're away, we'll go to like an Olive Garden and eat a lot of salad and carbs, pasta, stuff like that. Something that's got to give us a lot of energy the next day. Make sure we get a lot of water in our systems and stuff like that.
So you guys are heading to Orlando, Florida next week, in which you guys will be facing Fairleigh Dickinson University at 2 p.m. What are you guys going to do to plan for that matchup?
We're going to try and get some outdoor tennis, practicing. The style of like indoor and outdoor tennis is pretty different, so making sure that we're used to the slow pace of outdoors by making sure we're in good shape and just getting ready for kind of a different style of tennis, which has got to be very important.
Awesome. Well, good luck next week as you guys travel to Orlando. Thank you so much for taking the time to let me interview you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Butler track had a really good outing last weekend at the Big East Indoor Championships. Men's track placed 5th overall, and women's track placed 7th overall. Bark reporter Sharon Plowman sat down with freshman Carson Fields to talk about her success at the meet, including breaking 2 Butler track records.
Hi everyone, I'm here with track star Carson Fields to talk about the Big East Championship over the weekend. So tell me, how exciting was it as a freshman to go to the championship meet?
Yeah, it was really fun being in New York and being with the team. We train all fall and winter to hopefully get to conference, so the fact that I got to go is really fun.
So I'm sure you had a lot of teammate support. Was your family there at the meet too?
Unfortunately, they were not. It's okay because they come out to a lot of the other meets, but I was getting a lot of texts from them, so it was good.
Had a lot of moral support no matter what.
Exactly.
That's good. So at the championship meet, you have a couple of Butler records now. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
How does that feel?
Honestly, it hasn't really hit me. It feels good, but like I said, training just to get to conference was like the goal, and I was just like happy to be there. Obviously, PRing was also the goal, so the fact that I could do that and then get the records is kind of like icing on the cake.
So were there alumni who were at the meet with you guys also?
Yeah, actually both records that I broke, both like former holders were there. So like one alumni coaches, and she had the 60, so I got to like talk to her. And then Allie is still on the team, and that was her record too. So I got to like hug her afterwards. It was really fun.
Well, that's great. As long as there's no rivalry now, everything works out perfectly. All right, thank you so much for joining me.
Joining me now is fellow Bark reporter Jimmy Lafickas to talk a little bit more about how the women's lacrosse team is doing this season. All right, Jimmy, tell me, how has the women's lacrosse team started their 2nd season here at Butler?
Kelsey, thanks for having me on today. They haven't won yet, but there's a lot of grit and a lot of competitive spirit to this team. And if they can go out and put a full 60 minutes together, I think they have a chance to capture their first win on the road.
Now, Jimmy, what specifically do you think this team needs to work on in order to snap this losing streak that they have?
They haven't put a full 60 minutes together yet. If they continue to be aggressive and look to shoot and score and tighten up on the defensive end, I think they're going to be all right. Haley Hallenbeck has 7 goals and multiple hat tricks to her name. She's leading the team right now, and she's a huge part of their success.
Now, Jimmy, this lacrosse team is a very young team, the roster majority being freshmen and sophomore. So how important do you think leadership is on this team, and from whom can we find it from?
They have 3 captains, Hallenbeck being one of them. And like I said, she's been stepping up. You talk about Addie Smith and Jordan Fishbach also as captains. And 2 freshmen that have really stepped up and scored a few goals are Karina Latsko and Morgan Page. So if they continue to go out and continue to play hard, they have 3 chances to win one on the road over spring break. So we'll see what happens.
Well, let's hope they snag that win over spring break. Well, Jimmy, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll make sure to keep you updated on those upcoming lacrosse matchups.
And that's all we have for this week. I'm Cisco Scaramuza.
And I'm Kelsey Casper. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of The Bark for Butler 360 Sports.